what the REITs generally do is every quarter, every 3 to 6 months or so, they're going to increase those rates. If somebody moves into a unit for $30 and then 6 months later, you're increasing their rent to $50 per month.
So, audience, I hope you're listening. If you're ever underwriting a deal, I never write rent increases more than 3%, period. I don't care what market I'm in. And if I do get into another deal with some partners and they're doing 5%, I will challenge that and say, show me what it looks like when we increase the rent by 2 or 3%, right? So, you have to do that stress test on those rent increases because, again, you don't want to get in trouble in case the market takes a dip when you don't expect it. So for sure. So let's cross over a little bit to self-storage. So I myself and my husband are involved in a self-storage investment opportunity. So self-storage acts a little bit differently, right? It's not just the rent is 100 and then it goes to 105 and then 110. It fluctuates. So talk to me a little bit about the rents and how they fluctuate and how you see that as recession resistant.
Yeah, and that's a great point too. Is in the apartment world, most leases are annual leases, 2-year leases, even in some more industrial parts of real estate. We're looking at 5 or even 10-year leases. But in the self storage world, almost all of our leases are month to month. So it certainly gives us some flexibility on a monthly or quarterly basis to evaluate where the P&L stands, where the economy stands, what's going on as far as a possible recession or inflation, and adjusting rates accordingly. And so a lot of the big REITs, what they'll do and what operators like ourselves will try to do as well is basically advertise as cheap of a price as we can to get a customer in the door. And generally, self storage customers are fairly sticky because they spend a lot of time to move into a unit. Sometimes they have to rent a moving truck or spend an afternoon getting stuff in and out. And so, if we're able to get them in, even if it's for a price that's well below what the market might support for rental rates, very common to then rate manage that tenant. And so, what the REITs generally do is every quarter, every 3 to 6 months or so, they're going to increase those rates. And that's really just going to depend on the market, right? I mean, it's not going to be a standing 5%. It's not going to be a standing 3% or 10%. If the market commands or is able to command, 20% rental increase, that's not super uncommon because we could have a situation where somebody moves into a unit for $30 and then 6 months later, you're increasing their rent to $50 per month. And then you're going to continue to increase them, whether it's quarterly, biannually, or however the market demands.
And what's the average amount of time that people stay in or rent a self-storage unit?
By and large, 9 to 12 months is the general average. Of course, it's going to vary portfolio to portfolio and market to market. But that churn is something that is a bit more acceptable, I'd say, in the self storage world than in the multifamily world, just because turnover costs are so much lower, much easier to turn a self storage unit, mostly just sweeping out the unit, confirming that the doors and the latches are still operable. Of course, there's vacancy concerns in any asset class, and doing your best to limit that is important. But the actual cost of turning a unit is much less than in other asset classes.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the making sure that the unit is secured. So I heard some horror stories about people like moving into a self-storage unit and finding people living there and other just horror stories. I love that you just brought that to our attention. And then also that it's less cost than multifamily. I mean, most multifamily, you got to paint, new carpet, right? Do the repairs because maybe they just didn't ignore them. So could be quite substantial to a broom and a new lock and a little bit of time, right? To sweep out the unit and just get it in a decent condition for the next tenant or the next storage person.
Yeah, and we've actually dealt with folks living in a unit, and it's not a pleasant experience, and it certainly complicates things in the self-store. And of course, this is going to be state by state. Each state has its own rules and regulations, but generally in the self-storage world, you don't have to do evictions. You can mainly just auction a unit, and usually, depending on the state, you could get in and out of that process in 30 to 60 days. But when somebody is living in a unit, it gets a little stickier. So we actually had to do full-blown eviction there and have all the fun that we normally have in the multifamily world.
Oh, wow. And who found this person living in the unit? Just a little sidebar.
Yeah, for sure. So at all of our facilities, we have boots on the ground. So basically, maintenance tech who will go to a property, whether it's 2 to 3 times a week, once a week, just depending on the size of the property, what's needed there. And so that individual, we have them do lock audits as well and unit audits on a weekly basis. So we saw some smoke coming out of the unit, and we got a better set of eyes on it and uncovered that somebody was actually living in the unit.
Wow, that's crazy. And just from a legal standpoint, you said it was more complicated. I've never come across that, thank goodness. But how does one have to jump through hoops to get somebody to move out of a unit was intended for stuff versus a person?
Yeah. So again, it's state by state, and there's right ways and wrong ways to do it. And we certainly try to always do things the right way. So we probably went above and beyond in doing an eviction. There were probably other ways to have that person vacate the unit, but we wanted to be able to sleep at night basically. So we went the safest route possible. So we basically filed an eviction just like you would file an eviction for a multifamily unit, and treated the storage unit as that individual's home, and sought to have the sheriff evict him for not paying rent and also for not obeying the rules of a self-storage lease. So of course, just like any other lease, there's rules and regulations within the lease, including you may not live in the unit. We want to analyze rent rolls and profit and loss statements. We're not trying to fool ourselves. We want to know the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Jacqueline and Melvin, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to listen to this episode of Get Diversified. Please make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. Finally, stop by our website and follow us on social media. Ciao for now. Make it a great day, and we'll see you next time. And remember, get diversified.